If you can't explain something simply, you don't understand it well enough. Albert Einstein. If you've ever looked at a globe, you may have noticed something odd. Greenland is covered in ice. The peculiarity behind the name of Greenland has been noticed and questioned by many. So, what's the deal? Is it true that Eric the Red named the land in hopes of attracting more people and building a community, or was Greenland really full of forests until very recently? To understand everything, we will drain the oceans, discover the mystery of the Earth's axial tilt and the change of the Earth's poles, unravel the secret of dozens of pyramids around the world, learn a lot of new and unexpected things about Chinese temples, palaces and tombs, explain the mystery of permafrost and climate change, disassemble the asteroid into particles, simulate the fall of comets to Earth and see the real traces and consequences of such collisions. We will justify innocent volcanoes, we will determine the dates of recent monstrous disasters and lift the veil of the causes of the death of Mars. Buckle up, it will be interesting. The question of changing the Earth's geographical poles worries many inquisitive minds around the world, and simple and well-known laws of physics will help answer it. The Earth has a dedicated axis of rotation, and the Earth's crust is constantly moving on a layer of molten magma, and just like everything else in the universe, it must obey the laws of vortex motion and the action of the Coriolis force. If the tilt of the Earth's axis has not changed since the beginning of the cooling of the molten Earth's matter, then during the 200 million years of the Earth's crust's existence, vortex mountains and relief irregularities should have formed at the geographical poles around the axis of rotation. Let's drain the oceans and try to see them. There is nothing like this at the North Pole. What does this mean? That the universal laws of physics don't work for Earth? After all, everything in the universe obeys these laws. Cyclones, seas and oceans, galaxies and the solar system form vortices. Or maybe it's just that the modern North and South poles of the Earth are not the first. And the old poles are located in another place, and there are those same vortex mountains and faults, and the direction of the vortices coincides with the direction of the Earth's rotation, and they are located exactly at opposite ends of the old Earth's axis. So physics is working, and the poles have shifted after all. I wonder how long ago it was. Did people live at the same time, worship the sun and built their houses and temples, focusing on the cardinal directions? In the countries of the Far East, the southern direction has traditionally been associated with the midday sun. Therefore, the entrance on the south side of the house was considered the most favorable here. The Chinese oriented not only temples to the north but also entire cities. In the Celestial Empire, the throne of the ancient rulers was facing the south, so the expression, to turn to the south, as well as, to turn to the north, means to enter the service of the ruler. The Forbidden City in Beijing is the most extensive palace complex in the world with a fortress wall and a fortress canal built in 1420. The red color indicates the direction to the modern North Pole. But the city itself has a different dedicated destination. Is it that China strictly respected traditions, built complex architectural complexes, but could not accurately determine the direction of the midday sun? The old summer palace in the antique style was officially built in 1707. Temples and ruins of palaces here generally have other directions. The sacred Penglai mountain in China, where people have lived since the first millennium BC, has different temples oriented in different directions, including the modern North Pole. Yingzhou in Chinese mythology is a sacred mountain where immortals live. Legend has it that there are 3 sacred mountains in the Bohai Sea: Penglai, Yingzhou and Abbot. The temple complexes in honor of the 8 immortals are oriented towards the old North Pole, which I have designated as the zero, blue direction. The highlighted areas of construction of dozens of ancient structures around the world intersect at 5 main points. Strict traditions of orientation to the cardinal directions have been established for all these structures. The dates of their construction allow us to estimate the chronology of changes in the North Poles. The city of Suzhou was founded in 514 BC. Confucian Taoist and Buddhist temples here have 2 distinct directions. Pink lines intersect at the same point with ancient Roman buildings. Shanghai, Longhua Temple, 3rd century AD, the white direction to the supposed second North Pole. Buddhist Temple of the Refuge of the Soul, 4th century AD. The Temple of God City in Shangqiu was built so long ago that the exact date of foundation is not known. Modern structures, as we can see, face the modern north, the red direction. The ancient city of Pingyao, 8th century BC, the western fortress wall and the ancient architectural complex are aimed at the ancient pole. The city was first built during the reign of King Xian of the Zhou dynasty and expanded in the third year of the Hongwu reign of the Ming dynasty, 1370. Shaolin Temple in Denfeng, 5th century AD, the swastika has symbolized the sun in Chinese culture since the 7th century. Temple of the White Horse, 1st century AD. The mandala is a Buddhist and Hindu symbol, the circles symbolize the universe and the dimension of the deities, and the square between them is oriented to the cardinal directions. The ancient city of Xi'an, founded in the 11th century BC, was the destination of trade caravans that traveled along the Great Silk Road to China. There are burial mounds of ancient China in the vicinity of the city, including the mausoleum of Qin Shi Huang with a terracotta army. Dozens of pyramid tombs from different periods are also pointing at different poles here. Mausoleum of Emperor Wu of the Han Dynasty, 1st century BC, and this is just a part of all the Chinese pyramids. Qianling Mausoleum, Tang Dynasty, 8th century. The Buddhist Temple of Famen is the 3rd-5th century. Indonesia, Lumbung, and the ruins of temples from different periods have different directions here. India, ancient ruins. Hindu temples also have a dedicated cardinal direction and orientation. Nalanda is a Buddhist university and monastery complex that existed in the 5th to 12th centuries in northern India, one of the largest educational centers of its time. The City of Saints, 13th century. Buddhist temples in Kathmandu. Amritsar Temple, 12th century. Joel Gumbaz, 17th century. There are many ancient temples in India and all of them are directed to the same points as the Chinese ones, the most famous ones are marked on the map. The Four-Faced Temple, 15th century. Girnar Jain Temples, 12th century. 15th century. The oldest famous city in Central Asia, Merv, was founded at the end of the 3rd millennium BC. The necropolis of Meroe, the pyramids were built here from the 6th century BC, the tombs of different periods also have different orientations. The Temple Mount in Jerusalem, the Muslim sanctuary above the foundation stone, 7th century. Africa, Timgad, ancient Roman ruins, the 1st century AD, also has a pronounced orientation and is directed at the same point with the Chinese ruins in the antique style. In the East in the Middle Ages it was customary to place the apses of Christian churches. The direction perpendicular to the east is north, but for some reason, officially built in the 17th century, Versailles faces the old North Pole, as well as Notre Dame Cathedral, built on the site of an early Christian church of the 4th century. Venice was founded in the 6th century, a city full of mysteries and ancient structures. Christian basilicas have been built here since the 8th century. Stockholm, Sweden, a 14th century German church. Kronstadt, where the construction of St. Petersburg began, officially the first fortress was built here in 1703. The oldest Russian city of Veliki Novgorod. One of the strange features of ancient Russian temples and palaces is the design absence of heating systems. In palaces with high vaults, spacious galleries and large windows, as well as in temples, the project did not provide any heating, and this is in the harsh Russian climate. These structures were allegedly built according to the designs of foreign architects, and therefore heating in them was arranged later, wherever necessary. But if you pay attention to the intersection point of their orientation, it becomes clear that at that time they were all located quite far from the North Pole at the latitude of the tropics, and heating in the tropics was not necessary at all. Based on the dates of construction of Chinese temples, it becomes obvious that in the 1st century AD, Greenland was in a temperate climate and at that time it was a flourishing green island. As for the Egyptian pyramids on the Giza Plateau, it is generally assumed that they are oriented almost to the north, but if we consider them in a complex, we can distinguish the general direction of development. The Great Sphinx looks in this direction. The Maya and Aztecs also built pyramids, and the Pyramid of Kukulkan also has a dedicated building area. The pyramid complex in Mexico, the Pyramid of the Sun, a dedicated area of construction. And all these pyramids are directed at the same point with the swirling irregularities of the relief. Probably, only the ancient Egyptians or the ancient Armenians knew whether there was a north or south pole at this point. It turns out that in the entire known history of mankind, the tilt of the Earth's axis has changed at least 6 times. The map of global weather conditions is exactly consistent with the position of the old poles, and the areas with the coldest annual average temperatures are marked in pink, which also coincide with permafrost zones. The Earth in the regions of the old North Poles has been accumulating cold for a long time and still has not had time to warm up. This provides a simple explanation not only for the mysteries of finding permafrost in temperate latitudes, but also for the miraculously preserved drowned and quickly frozen mammoths. The poles changed suddenly, mammoths who lived in a warm climate drowned and froze after some event, because the North Pole became closer. What could be the reason for this? Only an external tangential impact comparable to the Earth's moment of force relative to the axis of rotation could change the direction of the Earth's rotation. To understand how this happened, we need to get rid of one earthly stereotype, dictated by its gravity. All our life experience suggests that whole objects in the air should be solid or have a shell. The gravity of the Earth does not allow you to just lift a pile of sand. For this you need to at least pour it into a bag. To raise liquid water, you need to pour it into a glass first. But in zero gravity, everything works differently. Loose and liquid substances can be whole due to the particle's own gravitational force. There are many large objects in outer space, and not all of them are solid, and they don't need any shell until someone's strong gravity acts on them. One of these objects is the asteroid Bennu. It is 560 meters in diameter, its mass is 140 million tons, it seemed solid to everyone through a telescope, but when they tried to land the OSIRIS-REx interplanetary station on it, it almost fell into it. The soil at the landing site scattered in different directions, leaving a large crater. It was possible to take samples from the surface only the second time. NASA scientists compared its surface to a pool filled with plastic balls. It has no solid surface, it consists of cosmic dust and piles of rocks that are held together by their common gravity. What do you think will happen to all this sand and rocks if gravity is turned off? The asteroid will crumble, all its particles will simply fly apart. The combined gravity of Bennu is 1,000,000 times less than that of Earth, and if such an asteroid were to fly towards our planet, it would begin to disintegrate long before impact due to tidal forces. The force of gravity decreases with distance. Due to the difference of this force at the ends of the object, its near side is attracted more strongly, the far side is weaker, the asteroid will stretch. This effect is called tidal forces. Not one solid asteroid will collide with the Earth, but a hypersonic cloud of rocks and sand, and such a cloud will not leave one large crater on the surface. There will be a lot of small craters, many craters over a large area. If the cloud was falling tangentially, the direction of impact will be visible. A scorched desert, rains will fill the craters with water and they will become lakes. And there are many traces of such collisions on our planet. But the Bennu asteroid is too small to tilt the Earth. Its density is slightly higher than that of water. The density shows how close the volume particles are located to each other. The density of comets is half that of Bennu. They are even more friable and their sizes can be impressive. Comets consist of water and sand, almost half of frozen water particles, the rest is cosmic dust and gas. Recent research by scientists shows that the water in comets is exactly the same as in the Earth's oceans. Cosmic dust consists mainly of silicon oxide, it's sand, ordinary sand, you've all seen it on beaches and in deserts, and it also contains sulfur, which we'll need later. And comets also do not have a solid shell and collapse under the influence of external gravity. The Great Comet of 1882 broke up into 6 pieces in the gravitational field of the Sun. Comet Atlas broke up into 3 dozen pieces 145 million kilometers from Earth. Comet Shoemaker-Levy, when colliding with Jupiter at a speed of 64 kilometers per second, broke apart under the influence of tidal forces. The larger the comet, the higher the chances that it will reach the target. The largest discovered to date is Comet Bernardinelli-Bernstein with a diameter of 200 kilometers. Can such an object rotate the Earth's axis? Let's do an experiment. The Universe Sandbox Space Event Simulator allows you to do this. For clarity, return the tilt of the axis to its prehistoric position. Add Halley's Comet and increase its radius to 100 kilometers. 50% of it consists of silicates, sand and 50% of water. We'll put it on the collision point and point it at an angle. This simulator also has an earthy stereotype about the hardness of space objects. Solid asteroids release all their kinetic energy at one point, but a comet will behave like a hypersonic cloud of incandescent water vapor and sand and transfer all the energy in portions and over a large area. And most of it will go precisely to the rotation of the Earth. The water will instantly evaporate upon collision with the atmosphere, and the energy of the gas and dust clouds scattered over a large area will not be able to destroy the Earth's crust, it will push it. We will reduce the sampling rate of the physics calculation in order to transfer energy in parts and conduct a simulation. The new Earth axis is shown in green. What is the result of a comet with a radius of 200 kilometers? 300 kilometers. 400. The Earth's axis has shifted by almost 30 degrees, and the day has become 1.5 times longer. It's time for calendar reform, because there are fewer days a year. Are there any traces of collisions with supersonic gas and dust clouds on Earth? There is. This is the largest, a scorched desert from Africa to Mongolia, with a pronounced direction of fall. When approaching the Earth it broke up into 3 parts. Australia, this was the epicenter of the collision. The more iron there is in the comet, the redder the sand will be. The direction of the shock wave is clearly visible. South Africa, red sand and lots of small craters. South America, there were 4 of them here. After the first one, the Earth has almost recovered, but traces of the collision are still visible. The epicenter of the second. The direction of impact is noticeable only on the plains, but in the mountains there are deserts, unexplained high-altitude deserts, from where sand dunes are high in the mountains. Only from above there is no other way. Another smaller one with a pronounced direction of impact. North America, the comet that destroyed the Aztec civilization. And again, high-altitude deserts with a red desert tan due to cometary iron. 6 large comets, 6 old poles, 6 monstrous catastrophes that brought humanity to the brink of extinction. Cometary water after the collision enveloped the Earth in water vapor, which fell in dirty rain and snow for many years and raised the level of the world's oceans. The climate changed dramatically. Long-term cold snap and crop failure. The dates of these events can be determined by the anomalous sulfur emissions in the glaciers of Greenland and Antarctica. If emissions are noted on different sides of the planet, this indicates the global scale of the event. But they are usually associated with volcanic eruptions in tropical regions, because supposedly this is how sulfur compounds from volcanic ash can cover both hemispheres, and scientists even manage to link the dates of eruptions to emission peaks. But if we analyze the data from Antarctica's glacial cores on our own, we will see that abnormal sulfur emissions begin much earlier than the peaks. After Comet 1256, acid rains lasted for 6 years. How powerful would a volcanic eruption have to be to cover the entire planet in ash for 6 years? 9 years of acid rain followed Comet 1453. 11 years after the comet of 1595. In the 19th century, there were 2 consecutive emissions from 1808 to 1812 and from 1814 to 1820. The modern North Pole has been in its place since that time. The city of Washington was built strictly on the cardinal directions with a direction to the modern north, and the capital, from which the construction of the city began, was founded in 1820, and in 1814, according to legend, the British burned down the old Congress building. I can assume that they arrived on a comet. Why have we only received fragmentary information about the consequences of these disasters? which seem to us something distant and improbable, because the 19th century was only 200 years ago. The Great Comet of 1807 approached Earth for 4 months and was visible to the naked eye, but disappeared in January 1808, falling somewhere in South America. There were simply no witnesses left alive at the crash site. And people in Europe on the other side of the planet became, to put it mildly, not up to the stars, because the consequences of the disaster were much more terrible and lasted so long that they overshadowed the collision itself. It is the consequences of such disasters that have been preserved in our history. Years of dirty rains and snow, climate change, famine, epidemics and wars for survival. Comets turn continents into deserts and destroy entire states. Everything you love and know how to do can lose its value in an instant. Culture, art, science will become useless knowledge, they will not save you from hunger. Everyone you love may be gone, along with cold and hunger come epidemics, not only bats, but also infectious birds and sick wild animals. And only the monstrous, devastating wars for survival remain in history, because they are much more terrible than the disasters themselves. All our technologies are assembled from parts and materials from all over the world. What happens if the next disaster destroys an entire continent and it becomes impossible to maintain the equipment? How will you survive without energy and communications? What will happen to you if the lights are turned off all over the world? A new era of rebirth is dawning. And all because humanity, having conquered space and reached a high level of technological development, instead of dealing with really important issues, destroys itself. Weapons for the destruction of people are powerless against comets. You are looking for intelligent life on other planets, but there is no intelligent life on our own planet. And now about Mars. There are also vortex relief irregularities at the poles of Mars. It is believed that these are ice caps and were caused by the wind. In the Martian summer, when the carbon dioxide ice melts, it becomes clear that the ice growths repeat the shape of the mountains. But only Mars rotates in the opposite direction, which turned it around and turned it into a lifeless desert. The impact of a comet or the Zanabekov effect, or both at the same time, is not yet clear. But Mars died, the whole planet died.